Hello, everyone. Good evening. Generally, what I normally do in these talks is that I pretty much gauge the people sitting there. And as they start nodding off, I either move on to something else or speed up a bit. So we'll have to see how we get on with this one because I can only see a couple of you. So I'm going to have a go sharing my screen. And because I've got various pictures for you to see. Today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you... here we go. We're going to go for that one there. Can we see that? Yeah, cool. Good. Right, so what I'm going to do today is I'm going to give you a little bit about myself and how I came to operate the boatyard. Will be a little history of the Oxford Canal and Tooley's boatyard, of course, and the future and what's coming up and exciting plans we have in store. So this is what we're going to do. It's going to be about 45 minutes, I think. So it depends if we go on. It may be a bit more, but again, we'll see how we get on. Okay. So starting off with myself, I was first involved in archaeology. I had a different career. I used to travel all over the country, a bit like Time Team, doing excavations in the way of development, very much in the way like Tooley's, the way when Tooley's was a threat, we'd have gone in and done excavations, for example. So I've worked in Turkey, the British Museum. I've worked all over pretty much southern England, pretty much. I didn't quite like the way archaeology was going, and a friend of mine was setting up a restaurant boat at the time on Thames, and the Marchioness sank in London, and all the rules and regulations changed and rippled up the waterways. And overnight, I found myself one of two people who were qualified to handle the restaurant boat, and the other one had angina. So my friend was quickly asking me, would I change career? And so I went into business with him, and we set up the restaurant boat Rosamond the Fair. So while I was there, it was based at the Troughton at Wilvercote, and I can't help myself. It's in my makeup. I look down at the ground all the time, and in this case, I looked down the river, and I saw something at the bottom, which appeared to be a great big piece of pottery. My eyes clicked on a piece of pottery, right, straight on down. I went down and got it. And it wasn't a piece of pottery, it's a piece of metal. And this thing was a gorget. It's a piece of neck armour. And I sent a drawing off to the Tower of London, and they dated it to within 2 years of 1643. So it was a quite a nice piece. So that was a nice piece of armour I found. I won't go on to it much more. It caused a few problems because the pub then took it off of me, and I donated to the museum, and there was all sorts of issues, but I won't go into that. So, but there you go. Nice piece of armour. After leaving the Troughton, we went to a derelict site in Jericho, and it was what's now the Jericho Boatyard. We named it Castle Mill Boatyard. And we had to have somewhere for our restaurant boat to go. And there was nowhere in Oxford to go. All the waterways, and you would not leave. We couldn't find anywhere. And anyway, so we took on the site. So we thought, what should we do? This was probably about 95, I suppose, something like that. And 94, 95. And the Oxford had got rid of all the car parking spaces. And we thought, car parking, we'll make a killing here. We thought, no, we won't. It's out of character. We need a boatyard in Oxford. And so we established the boatyard by craning boats out. And eventually the site was handed over to Bellway at the time. And we swept the site and gave the keys back to British Waterways at the time. And we put all of our stuff into our 3 boats, and we went up the canal. And that was on the Friday, and on the Monday morning, we moved straight into Tooley's boatyard. And you couldn't plan anything like that. It was amazing, the timing. So that was pretty good. There was a fight for Jericho after us, but we weren't involved in that at all. Okay, so The Oxford Canal was obviously very important for the history of Britain, of the world. You know, it's a very, very important time. The canals were very much there at the start of the Industrial Revolution, and people have different ideas of where the start of the Industrial Revolution came from. And there is a chap called Thomas Newcomen, and he was an engineer, and he went round to different mines, and he used to supply equipment. And because he was an engineer visiting the actual mines themselves, he could speak to the people using them to get feedback on the actual equipment. And at the time, there were all the engines were pretty poor. They're very unpowerful, not very powerful at all. And the pumps would only pump a small amount of water out. And what so that they could only go down to pretty much down below the water table. And he came up with the atmospheric engine. And this was a very powerful engine. And this could pump out hundreds of feet of water out of mines. And suddenly you had coal seams, tin, all different types of mines were now could be pumped out, exposing lots and lots of the raw material. And they needed a cheap, effective way of bringing literally the coal to market. And the Duke of Bridgewater had a mine in Manchester, and he brought the coal boat right up to the canal face, and up to the coal face, and he took the coal out. And he knew that from his youth. He went around Europe, and he knew that if he could build a network of canals, then his mine would go into profit. So he had a vision of the Grand Cross, and that was connecting the Mersey down to the Thames and the Humber across to the Severn. And to start off, the first phase of this was the Oxford Canal, going from his coal fields in the Midlands down to the River Thames. And it was commissioned in 1769, and by 1778 it reached Banbury, and they ran out of money. Now, this is quite an interesting picture here of a canal being built. Now, obviously, this isn't the 1700s because it's a photograph, but you can pretty much see it was pretty much dug out with picks, shovels, and black powder for the stubborn bits. There's another nice photograph here of this is Fenny Tunnel, when there was a tunnel of Fenny, and if you can see here, you've got the canal. This is the line of the old tunnel, and they've just put the bridge over the top, and might be able to make out just here there is the old tunnel, and they were using the old tunnel to support the bridge to make the arch, and they were just finished, and this boat was here to knock down this last piece of tunnel so they could take down the structure to hold the bridge over the top. So that's quite a nice photo there. Well, at the time when the boat canal reached Banbury, they ran out of money and they had to extend down to Oxford. They built Tooley's boatyard at the time, and eventually they raised more money and went down to Oxford, where it opened in 1790. And going back to Tooley's boatyard, so a lot of you will probably recognize this as Tooley's boatyard, if you remember it. That's how I used to remember it when we used to bring our restaurant boat here. You've got the dry dock building here, which a lot of people remember. Quite an interesting building in its own right. It's a ramshackled old building. It's made out of doors. It had lots of doors in its makeup. One of the interesting things I think about it is that they started actually putting bits of wood onto the old frames to make the building in the 60s, and they actually finished it in the 80s. So it took them nearly 30 years to build it. So, which was quite interesting. But there you go. Notable buildings in the back. We've got the forge just here, which we'll be discussing later. This is the carpenter's workshop with the steam chest outside. And this is the bell-driven machinery shop here. And this is obviously the Oxford Canal we've got going down here. So here we go. So this is what the boatyard looks like today. Well, it doesn't quite look like that today because it was taken a long time ago and it's incredibly messy. And I know that the council would probably like us to be a bit more tidier, but we do try. But we are a working boatyard, which does our best. You can see Rosamond Fair when Rosamond Fair was there. The buildings we've got in the back, we've got this, the bridge going across the canal to the Banbury Museum from the Tourist Information Centre, and we've got the Tudor's Boatyard building. Now, the building itself is a bit unusual. Some people love it, some people hate it. But what I can say is that the reason that the building was there was because it was part of the money raised was actually through an architectural competition. And that's so it was a part of a design prize that was actually made. It's a bit old now. The building leaks. It wasn't very good from the start, but there you go. I used to have to say it was a really good building, but it's not that great. But it does our purposes, let's say. So look at this is a picture looking south from the road bridge that used to be there, and there's a lot going on in this photograph. We have the bus station. Again, some of you may remember the bus station. We have the forge sitting there, looking in poor state. The dry dock. This is Bert's caravan, Herbert Tooley's caravan. There's his grapes. And in the dry dock, we can see a boat sticking out. And the interesting thing about this boat is that we can just make out Clara. And Clara was the last boat that Bert worked on. It was in the dry dock, believe it or not, for 7 years. So he was pretty much, at the time, not doing very much in the dry dock itself. The unusual boat on the outside, which defies the laws of physics by staying afloat even though it's in half, is a boat called Rill. And it was a station boat and owned by Pete Downer, who was actually around at the time. And Pete Downer ran the site for a number of years with Bert on stage and then afterwards as well. And the back was poor, so he cut it off and he built it. And it's a rather beautiful workboat, which if you come to Canal Day, is normally sitting outside Tooley. So it's a very, very nice boat. So moving on, we've got a photograph here of, again, this was quite a while ago. It's not quite that tidy anymore, unfortunately, but there you go. But that picture does say 1,000 words. Look at the old forge sitting there in the middle of the all this development, and you can see how close Tooley's Boatyard has come to being lost in the past. I'll go into that a bit later. But we have the forge. The forge and the boatyard dates to 1778, and that's the forge and the brick-lined hull. So the forge itself, hopefully I've got some pictures of the forge, if I remember rightly. Here we go. So I've got a couple of videos in just to spice things up a little bit. So there's a bit of sound with them, unfortunately. I probably should have taken the sound off, but there you go. I'm not that computer literate, unfortunately. Here we go. So this is Jamie. Jamie is a key part of the team. He is calling him an engineer and a blacksmith, which he excels in both of those things, is a bit of a disservice to him, really. He's also a Spitfire engineer. He's a very, very clever chap. He's a very important part of the management team at Tooley's Boatyard. And here is a little video of him playing with some metal on the forge. We've got the anvil there. The anvil was probably made on the boatyard itself. You can see the hearth in the background being held up with sleepers, which probably came from the dock. And wait for the banging to stop. Here we go. That's better. Okay, so the blacksmith would have started probably around the age of 8, and he would have been probably paid by his parents to come and learn a trade. And the blacksmith, to start off with, would have had him pumping the bellows, and eventually he would have moved on to making parts, and then he'd become useful, and the blacksmith would have quite liked him to work with him, and eventually he would be qualified, and only when the blacksmith said, and he would be allowed to go off. But the blacksmith wouldn't really want this because he wouldn't get paid for having him anymore. And also there'd be a blacksmith in competition with him as well. So the blacksmith, the boatyard itself, it was, they used to call them jobber yards. And it's quite funny, really. So I've heard this term, and I've never really known where it's come from. I've just known it's been a jobber yard. But it's in a jobber yard is where you get families coming together. And in this instance, we've got the blacksmith. So the plasters was a big, over nearly 100 years worth of plasters in the forge, worked together with the toolies and provided a service of boat building. And they used to work together to make the parts. So they used to make the parts of the boats and repair items as well. And then these wagons for the wheels for the wagons as well. So in the forge today, we do repairs. So if a boat bends its rudder, if you sail your boat and you bend your rudder, then there is no better tool than a forge like this to bend a 2-inch piece of metal and make it straight again. We also make, hang on, I've got some other pictures here. Hang on, let's show you something else. We can make other things which you can't buy. This is a set of tunnel hooks which we made. This was made by a female blacksmith a while ago. And I'll show you where these go. They're used for breasting boats up. And if you can't actually buy them, then obviously your blacksmith can make them. So, but it is obviously labour intensive, and we are up against other people. It's like India, for example. If we made hinges, we just couldn't compete with it because it's labour intensive. We also do a range of courses in the forge as well, where we teach people these 6 key steps of blacksmithing and techniques of blacksmithing, and we cover this in our guided tour as well, that we normally do, which I'll tell you about later as well. So Jamie, again, rather clever chap. Here he is here, and he's gold leafing some oak leaves and acorns that he actually made for the forge, and that went into a gate. And the oak obviously is very important for the boats, and the acorn we were seeing as the boatyard turning, looking for the future, and this was an acorn of this spreading to the future. But maybe a bit symbolic. There you go. So again, so Jamie's quite clever and can turn his hand to all sorts of things. And in fact, there's this also a bit of history. Banbury Lock got a direct hit in 1940, and Jamie here has recreated the bombing of Banbury Lock, which is a sculpture he's done, which is at present in Castle Quay Shopping Centre. A nice little story was that there was no casualties apart from one, which was a cockerel which had every single feather blown off of it, and it was completely bald. And they actually gave 6pence a look and put that towards the Spitfire Fund. So there you go. So the canals themselves, the boats themselves, started off by being pulled by groups of men. The labour was left over from the building of the canals, sitting in pubs. Presumably, horses were expensive, and the labourers were sitting around, and so they used to pull boats. And then eventually, horses took over, and they were used right up into the 60s. And steam was introduced, and I found a nice newspaper article about them installing one of the first engines into steam engines into a boat. And unfortunately, the weight of the steam engine actually pushed the boat onto the canal bed, and it couldn't actually cruise. But everyone was so excited because they could see that it was going to work. but it was quite interesting to read that and realise that it's stuck on the bottom of the canal. The diesel engines were introduced, and the Bollinger diesel engine was a British design, built in Sweden and brought back and actually introduced into the Fellows, Mawson and Clayton boats. And this led to basically a development in the yard. So going back to the boatyard, here's some visitors into the dry dock. The reason I took this photograph is because it's very unusual to see the dry dock full of water, because it's always in use. And if you ever go past and see there's a boat that's full of water, then we're either waiting for a boat to come, or I'm stressed out because there's a problem with the boat getting to us. So, because it's obviously one of our biggest incomes coming into the boatyard. This is a little video I've done just to show you the operation of the dry dock. So you can see this is the dry dock empty, and it is a very, very dry dock. And what we do is we have 3 heavy wooden planks at the northern end. We lift the top plank, and that lets water into the dock. It takes about 5 minutes, 10 minutes to fill up. Once it's full, we remove the planks, let the boat in. We tie it off with ropes, so you can see happening now. And then we put the planks back in, and we pull the plug. And it takes about an hour and a half if we're going well. And the water drains out, and the boat sits either directly onto the floor, or it goes onto sleepers if we need to get under the boat. It's a cofferdam style. So what basically happens is that the water does leak through the planks a little bit. And what we do is we have little channels draining down the side of the canal. Now, unfortunately, I didn't finish all the way through, but here we go. So you can see here, there's drainage channels down the side. And you can see that the dry dock here is nice and dry, which, believe it or not, is a little bit unusual for dry docks, because they're normally wet. So it is a good facility. I talked earlier about the boatyard and the introduction of the engines, and in the 1920s, this led to a development within the boatyard. And because they had to start working on boats in the dry dock, they built a roof at the northern end, and you can just about make out some brick pillars that we have here over the end, and that had a fixed roof. And for the rest of the site, the rest of the dock, they had this frame which used to be on a railway tracks, and they used to roll it up and down for where they're working on. And one of the interesting things about this, and also many other things about the boatyard, is that all these frames were made out of old boat hulls. And if you look at them, you can see they're made out of side planks and bottom planks and keels and different parts of the boat. So it's quite an interesting frame. So there's more pictures of those in action. So let's see if I can find them. I think there's one coming up. No, not yet. Okay, this is a photograph of Bert and George Tooley. Now, the Tooleys were from Lower Hayford, and Emmanuel was involved in agriculture, and he bought himself a pair of boats. And he was known as number one. And number one, which I'm sure most of you know, is number one is basically a sole trader who owns their own boats. And what they do is they get paid per load, whereas you could work for a large company and be paid as by the day. So, but they got paid more money by getting on loads. And they actually had quite a nice little setup, because what they used to do is they used to take pig iron from Samuelson's foundry in Banbury, and they used to take it to Coventry. And then they managed to get paid to bring sand back the other way. So they got paid both trips, which is really good. Now, they took on the George Tooley, so his son George Tooley took on Tooley's boatyard around 1900. And he apparently had no experience of working in docks, and took on the site, and he ended up getting a very good reputation with boats. And there's all sorts of stories about him, whereas he never used to take measurements, and the pieces of wood always fitted every single time. And so there's all sorts of stories about him. But what was said, one of the things about it was that it was said if you wanted your boat repaired, you didn't take it to the boatyard, you took it to the boatyard, Tooley's boatyard. So they had a very good reputation. So he had two sons, which is George and Herbert here. And the boat seems to be doing some strange things. And that's because, if you can make this out, this is the side of the boat, this is the base plate. And what they've actually done is the boat's come down onto rockers, and the rockers are basically like a seesaw. And what they do is the boat comes down, it drops onto one side, and they stack it up until they can work on the bottom of the boat, so they can do some work. Here, they're replacing an elm base bottom plank, and there's a bit of caulking going on. Quite a staged photograph, I think, but it's a very interesting photograph to see there. Okay, this is looking south, from the north looking south, and you can see the frame of the old building. So we know it's post-1920s, and the boat's leaning well over to the side, so you can see it's on the rockers, and they are, again, looking at the rudder, or whether they're doing at the back of the boat there. You can see the stop planks just here. So moving on. So this is a rather nice photograph here. This is a photograph of George Tooley, who is over here. He's wearing a bowler hat, so he can read, he's educated. And it's quite interesting, this photograph, because when I first looked at this, I thought there was the two sons here and here, but that's not us, the power of the boat. And the second son is just down here hiding away, which is quite nice. So this photograph here is of a boat called Providence, and it was a change boat. If you put your boat into the dry dock, then you can't trade. So they used to hire this boat out as a change boat, so they can carry on trading and working. Now, something very interesting, and I always ask this question, and anybody can enlighten me, I'll be extremely interested. This gentleman here keeps popping up. Who is he? Now, I think that this must be, to have a photograph in these days, and such an important photograph of this, with everybody staged, I would imagine that must be Emmanuel. So I reckon this must be George's dad. And so, very interesting. So if anybody knows about that, I'll be extremely interested. And of course, look at the boat, it's leaning on the side again. So it's always looks the wrong angle when you look at the boat. So rather a good photograph there. So moving on again, that's looking north, and you can see the building at the back. And this is the tin roof on the frame that used to roll up and down. And some of you with keen eyes may be able to notice a boat sitting in the dry dock, which is called Cressy. And some of you may know Cressy, I would have thought. We will get onto that a little bit later. So this is a photograph of a boat called Hardy. And we don't just work on old modern boats. We do a lot of modern boats, but we also work on old boats as well. This boat here was actually based up near Bronston on the Puddle Banks, and it was sunk. And we actually put a proposal to the Canal and River Trust that rather than them scrapping this boat, which was going to cost them £15,000, could we have a bit of the money and take it away and put that money towards restoring it? And they said, oh, that could be a good idea, but let's see how this one goes and we'll talk about it. So after 4 years of being sunk, we raised the boat, got off the ground, and they said, oh, well done. But no, we're not actually interested anymore, thank you very much, but you can have the boat if you want. So, which we're a little bit upset about, but there you go. So it does highlight a point, in fact, for yourselves. Here you go, here's something for you. How many pieces of our history are sitting on our waterways, which are just falling apart and sinking? So the ones which are sunk maybe aren't that bad, because being in water, it's not that bad for them. We can preserve them. But our history is basically falling apart, and there's boats out there now which can be saved. And at the moment, they are, the CRT are spending £15,000 on ripping them apart when we could be saving them. But there you go. that's something which I did put towards CRT a while ago. So maybe it's something for the future we could raise up again, because it is our history. So the boat itself was we went for this boat because we wanted a local boat, but in the end we knew that Hardy was in trouble and it was in danger. So we went for this boat knowing it wasn't a local boat. So we got it up and we brought it back to Oxford, and then we found out that actually Hardy was a local boat, and it used to bring coal down to the dairy, and it has even been in Tooley's dock as well. So it's had a lot of history. So it's a perfect boat with lots and lots of history, and we know some of the people who owned the boat. So that is again extremely interesting as well. So this is Jamie again. Remember I said he was a blacksmith. He's also the boat builder. He's very clever chap again. Hardy was a bit fragile, so what we're doing here is that we've done various repairs, but there is a limit to how much we can do, and especially at the viewpoint we had no money at the time. And what we've done is put tin plates over the boat with a mixture of tar pitch and horse manure to make a glue to make it waterproof, and to strengthen the boat up. Actually, funny enough, when I first took on the boatyard, I had the health and safety executive turned up at the boatyard, and I was waiting for this. I was waiting for this big, this fight for the shopping centre, because I thought that noisy, smelly boatyards would have a bit of a problem. And he came in. He said, "I understand. I've had a complaint to the shopping centre that you've been burning petrol on the site." And I said, "Absolutely not. How shocking is that? No, we have not been burning petrol on the site. What we've been doing is we've been repairing boats using methods going back over 400 years, and we've been boarding up tar, pitch, and horse manure." And he looks at me, and he looked down at his checklist, and he wasn't quite sure which box to check. And he went off, and we never heard a thing from him again. So I think he must have been on our side. But I did have a bit of a chuckle over that one. So, but there you go. So we do the boatyard is, we do some work which can be a little bit smelly sometimes, but it's very interesting, and using old recipes. To the horror of my children, to stop the car and dive off into a field and pick up loads of horse manure, and completely shocked them the first time I did that one. So it was quite amusing. So this is a video of Sarah. It just gives you a bit of her working the dock. Sarah is another massive team. She's part of the management team. Me and Sarah run the day-to-day running of the boatyard. She organises all the bookings, and she books the boats into the dry dock. She tries to keep tabs of all the engineers and all the work in progress. And here she'll do whatever is necessary to be done. And this time she was working on Hardy, doing some caulking in the boat itself. So again, Sarah's got lots of skills that she brings from various past roles, and she's definitely a key part of the management team. So I don't want to do that. Oh, I just stop. There we go. Fine. So I'll scoot past these photographs because I've got probably too many. This is a picture of Venice. It's a Fellows Morton and Clayton boat. I love the iron riveted hull. I will skip on past that. I could chat about it. Apart from, I'll say that back up there, and I think there's another one for close up. Hang on. If it'll come clear in a second. Here we go. Is where the tunnel hooks, that you saw the picture of the hooks that we made earlier, actually go on to. So there you go for breasting up. So there you go. I'll scoot past that. We don't just work on narrow boats. We do. I do apologise to you, yogurt pots or whatever or Tupperware. But the narrow boat is generally what we work on, and we do work on some of the fiberglass boats. But we have to be a bit careful because if you don't chock them up right, they could fall over, and the customers don't like it if they fall over. Nor do we, because we have to pay for it. So here you go. There's just a variety of the different work that we do on the site. Here is a lovely photograph of the last boat being sideways launched into the canal. And this happened in 1914, I think it was. I think it was around 1914. I can't remember now. About 1914. And it was quite an action shot. You've got, it's lots going on here. You've got the old boatyard without the frame. Docks about here somewhere, or maybe a bit further back about here perhaps. The boat's shooting down some planks, hitting the water. So it slid downside, we hit the water, and there's a splash. In the background, I think I might be able to zoom in. It's amazing, this this photograph. He pops up again, sitting in the background with his hat on. I think it could be Emmanuel. We'll see. We don't know, but I'm very interested. But it's an interesting photograph there. Now, I'm rather interested in photography. This is a great photograph, and it was pretty much taken on a camera where you take the lens off and pop it back on again. And the only reason why there are little specks on this photograph is because the person who photographed this slide didn't clean it. So, and that's actually dust from there. So it's amazing. The amount you can zoom in is incredible. This photographs, that doesn't have that much, you can't zoom in that, but the quality is not very good on this photograph. So anyway, that was the last boat that was launched until in 2007. Oh, hang on, I've zoomed out. Can I zoom out again? Yeah, there we go. We did it. And this is the Dancing Duck. This was in 2007, and very similar, really. You've got, it's sliding down some girders into the water, and we've got a bit of a bow wave going on here. You might think that the boat looks a bit rusty and horrible, and the reason is because it is. And the reason being is because for those of you who have boats, metal boats, when you roll out the steel, you get a layer of skimmed metal over the top called mill scale, and it's incredibly hard and very difficult to get off, and nothing sticks to it. So you can either spend thousands of pounds in shot blasting it off, or you can let Mother Nature do it. So we rusted the layer off, and that's what we did. Now, when we went to launch this boat, we started building it, and we thought, oh, how are we going to get it in? Oh, it's always launched. Great. And, you know, it's either going to work or it's not. So we'll either get lots of publicity as it's going to, well, there's a nice sideways launch, or it'll sink and we'll get more publicity. So we can't lose, really. So we'll go for it anyway. So I thought I'd better give permission. So the local, probably British Waterways at the time, I probably said to me, I said to him, you know, can we sideways launch this boat into the water? And he said, oh, no, you can't do that. I said, well, why not? And there's lots of toing and froing with his boss. And eventually they came back and said, you can't do it because all the risk assessments. And I said, well, okay, well, if that's what it is, then no problem. I've got a glass building in the middle of bamboo. We build boats. I said, no problem. I'll write you the risk assessments. So we wrote the risk assessments. And in the end, they said, oh, okay, then. Okay, so it's a joint promotion we're doing. I said, okay, then let's do this. And what they did, they insisted on us putting a third girder into the mix. So we were sliding down 2 girders, they wanted 3. And their safety girder, which we eventually said, oh, okay, whatever we have to do to get this boat launched in. When the boat launched, started sliding in, their safety extra girder slipped off and landed on my toe. So that's health and safety for you. So, but there you go. So that was our launch of the boat. In fact, I've got a video. I do apologise about the quality. I do have a better one somewhere, but I can't find it. But it gives you a bit of a feel. This was taken on a very old mobile phone. It just gives you a little feel of what it was like. Very poor photograph. I'll do a video. So there you go. So that was the dancing duck being launched, and this is pretty much how she looks today. She's purposely built as it would start off. It was a self-drive boat. One of the reasons we bought her, but we've taken off the self-drive because we just can't handle our boat being smashed up by people who aren't used to steering them. So we stopped that. It is a helmsman training vessel. So we've got a inland. We've got a RYA in boat school. So we teach inland waterways, helmsman certificates, and various other courses here. So this is one of the boats we use for that. We've got we also use it for a trip boat as well. So we do boat trips, and they are going to be starting on Saturdays. I'll tell you about that in a bit later as well. And so this is the boat, the Dancing Duck. So it was put out to a local school who named it. There was lots of Harry Potter names at the time, but we went for Dancing Duck. So there you go. So here you go. So it's a nice picture of George painting a can at the in the paint shed, and of course painting was incredibly important for the narrow boats, and roses and castles were painted upon the boats themselves. There's all sorts. Not a lot of people know a lot about roses and castles, but I won't go into that now because I think we're probably a little bit limited on time, so I won't go into. I'll just go past that. Apart from that great photograph. Again, there's Bert there doing some flowers on the front of a boat in the dry dock again. So that's a rather nice photograph. We have various other workshops. We've got a carpenter store dating from the 1920s where they used to make wheels for the boats. No, for the boats, sorry. For the wheels for the carts around town while work was quiet. And also they used to pretty much store their tools for working on the wooden boat. So they would cut wood and in this belt shop we've got here, and they would fit them onto the boats and steam them outside and fit them onto the boats themselves. And there's all sorts of tools and equipment, and there's so many stories associated with a lot of this equipment. Which is rather interesting. Which I won't go into now because I think we probably don't have time again, so I will shoot past that one. But this is the carpenter store. So these days, if you need anything these days, then you can pretty much pick the phone up and order most things. Those days they used to make everything, so pretty much everything. So very clever lot. Okay, so going on to Tom Volt, some of you may have heard of, I would have thought. Tom Volt, I won't spend too much time on Tom Volt because you guys must know so much more than me on this subject. He was an engineer and he had a share in a garage, and he didn't like the way cars were being mass produced. So he sold his share, and he bought a boat which used to belong to his uncle, and he brought it to the Toolies. He knew the Toolies, and he brought it in, and he started to repair it. And he wanted to be become an author, and he started writing the book. And there's some beautiful extracts in there about the Toolies and boat building in the first 2 chapters of this book. And of course, the book became a catalyst for setting up the Inland Waterways Association, and it was a very important book of its time. Something quite interesting is that we had a blue plaque awarded to the boatyard for Tom Volt, and we were thinking about where we're going to site it. And it's a real rigmarole to get through this. You have to be assessed, and they have to really go through the whole thing. It's very important, very seriously. And where were we going to put this blue plaque? And I thought, well, maybe it would be better next to on the corner of the Castle Shopping Centre, next to the lift bridge, which used to be in the boatyard, because maybe a few more people could see it at the time. And they turned around and said, well, actually, no. the Castle Quay Shopping Centre is not protected like Tudis. Tudis is a World Heritage Centre. It will be there and protected, whereas Castle Quay isn't, and they consider that a temporary structure, which is rather interesting. So there's hope for us yet. So there you go. So Tom Wall, and of course there are lots of stories associated with him and the boatyard as well, and the Tulis. We discussed this is Banbury Lock, and this is just a quick photograph, just some of you who may be interested. I've shared this photograph so many times. Everybody must have seen this photograph now. This is the bombing of Banbury Lock in 1940, and they actually found one of the curbstones on the locks, these stones on one of the roofs in the High Street, which is quite interesting. There you go. That's just a nice picture I'll just show you there. Well, the boatyard itself is a unusual business, really, because it's an old, small boatyard, which it's been developed, and it's a lot smaller than it used to be. And most boatyards, you get lots of moorings, and the moorings normally pay for your ground rents before you even start getting out of bed in the morning. You're making your profit from all the moorings you have. And we don't have any of that, and we've just really got the dry dock and the small space we've got. So it's very important for us to try and make every square inch count. So we've got our boat school, we do breakdowns, and we do whatever we can. And we've got a few sidelines. This is one of the sidelines which you must have heard of by now, and I hope you have, because it's last year would have been our 11th year, I think, of Theatre in the Dock. Theatre in the Dock is it's normally around Canal Day. We pull the boat out to the dry dock, we wash the walls down, and we do a theatre production in dry dock. Kate Saffron from the Allen Theatre organises it. We've worked together for all these years, and we still do it. It's quite an unusual venue, and there's been some magic happens in this place. It's quite interesting. The acoustics are very, very good as well. Another sideline which I started up a few years ago. Well, I don't know, probably 10 years ago, probably. Again, to try and support the boatyard on the sideline, was I developed one of my, nothing to do with boating at all, or canals, but it was on my sidelines, and that is astronomy. I had a dome at the boatyard for a while, which was a sort of observatory, and I basically developed telescope mounts at the boatyard, and this one at the moment is the PEM, the portable in the English mount, and that was designed because the concept was built at Tulis. Most of the design was at Tulis, and it's now built between me and my friend in Kent. And this piece of equipment is designed to hold a very heavy telescope, and it can find any object in the night sky and hold it with pinpoint accuracy. So it's designed to counteract the Earth's rotation. So it's a piece of scientific equipment. There's a few people who have seen it. Mr. Moore, Sir Patrick Moore, before unfortunately we lost him. And this chap here was a chap who was at university doing his astrophysics degree, and he dropped out to join a band or develop his band, which went on to become Queen. So that's Brian May. So his brother. He's gone back and finished his doctorate, and he's now a renowned person. So this was one of the things I've done for Boatyard to try and bolster it. And I did astronomy courses as well, lots of astronomy courses. Had experts all over the world coming over and doing talks and demonstrations. If you've not heard already, I have a book which is available online, and so you can buy it through our website if you're interested. It's got about 140 odd pages. It's got about a similar amount of photographs, all different unusual photographs. If you've not seen the book, you haven't seen a lot of them before, because there's some real gems in there from the 2Ds collection, from our personal collection, from various sources that we found. And this tells you the history of 2Ds Boatyard, and that is for sale. So the boatyard itself, 1913, that's when that launch was. This photograph is a photograph we did, and pretty much the boatyard has continued to maintain boats on the site, and still does today, building and maintaining boats on the waterways here in Banbury. And looking at our future, the boatyard itself went through some, over the years, has had problems. It's a noisy, dusty, smelly, untidy place, and it doesn't always quite fit in. And some of the practices are quite old and redundant. In the 1970s, they tried to get 2Ds out, and they tried to build a marina, and they tried to move the 2Ds into a 40-foot dry dock, and they wouldn't have it, because obviously working boats are over 70 feet long. Various other times, also the Castle Shopping Centre happened, and before that happened, when the concept was coming on that one, they managed to get various. When I say they, there was various people at the time, local townspeople, business people, the IWA is involved, all sorts of people involved, and they managed to get the dry dock and the forge preserved, and they had a preservation order placed upon the dry dock and the forge. At which point a planning application went in for the forge to be a food kiosk and the dry dock to be a flower bed, which was rather unbelievable. And I've got a copy of that somewhere. And but beautiful sense prevailed, and it's still a working boatyard today. But even so, it's still, over the years, the boatyard itself has been a struggle to keep going. We don't have moorings. We're very small. We've never had a penny of funding all the times that, until recently. And it's been a struggle to keep it going. And what we've done is we've got together a group of local business people who have been extremely helpful in negotiating with the council. And what we've done is we've sat down and worked out the best thing for the boatyard is to turn it into a trust. And so we've set up the 2Ds Boatyard Trust. And the 2Ds Boatyard Trust, being a trust, the council can be more sympathetic and work better with the boatyard. And they have negotiated a 150-year lease of the boatyard. So the boatyard's future is saved. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be having my limited company I'm going to be not owning it. I will be one of the directors, but I will not be owning the boatyard anymore. And the actual business will be incorporated within the trust. So what will happen? The trust will own the boatyard outright. Will own the lease. So the limited company outright, and that'll mean that any profits go back into the trust. So now we are more so that we can in a better position to get money. And already the trust has been successful in getting some money for the forge. And you might notice if you walk by the forge, it's being refurbished, and that money has been raised through grants applied for by the trust, and they've been successful in getting that. Also, they also have managed to get a pot of money to make a feasibility study. And this feasibility study is useful for applying for like lottery grants and so forth. So what we are, this is going to be used for, it was basically getting the feel of the local community, local people, local businesses, our peers, on what we should do at the boatyard and the best way to work it. And our plan for Tooley's Boatyard is the site will be run and organised by the Tooley's Boatyard Trust, which will own the limited company. The limited company will be a fully working boatyard, continuing as we have done, working on boats, and that is our main business. We work as hard as we can and repair as many boats as possibly can on the site. Then on the outside of this, the trust is looking to redevelop the whole of the modern parts of the boatyard into something more better for the general public to come and see it, and will be building a tourist attraction around us working on boats. So part of our remit is to open the boatyard to working to the general public, and we are building a visitor attraction where you can come and see us working on boats. We've got some goals for the future as well. We've got all sorts of goals. A few of them are looking at building wooden boats on the site. And the first picture you saw, the wooden boat being launched sideways, we're going to be building something like that. And we are looking at doing things like looking at qualifications within the marine industry. There aren't many qualifications for inland waterways. And so we're looking to set standards, and also the future for propulsion as well. So watch this space. Now, the boatyard, before I wrap this up, there is something I will add as well, is the boatyard itself is changing. So we've got the Tooley's Boatyard Limited and also the Trust. And here's some links to our website. And we have a Friends of Tooley's, so if you want to get involved, you can do. But something to pit towards the IWA, and I have asked so many times over the years, putting it to the IWA, and I know you're busy, you guys are busy filling your own spaces, so I do appreciate the issues and problems that you have yourselves. But this is the birthplace of the IWA. It started when the concept was born in the dry dock with him writing his book, and I've invited IWA before to be involved, and it can be whatever you want. I think you should be involved. I think that at least have some posters and some flyers, and if that's all you want, then fine. But I think they should have a presence. But I think there could be more of a presence. You could. If anyone's interested, and on Saturdays, we are starting, I think it's June, I think we're starting, so I can't remember off the top of my head, I think it's June. We'll check the website, the details are on there. We are going to be operating our working museums again, will be open again, where people can come for a guided tour, a boat trip, and a slice of cake in the cafe. And so if anyone's interested in helping us out with I know Robin does a lot with this, and a lot of your members do as well, but on a regular basis, maybe helping out with boat trips and or working in the forge. There are anyone who's interested, full training will be given on those. So and also more on a strategic level, anyone who's interested, we are looking for trustees. So anybody who thinks that they've got the skills to help us, we would be very interested in maybe a trustee from the Inland Waterways Association, and if not a trustee, maybe an observer who we could actually link better in with for discussing things for the future. So I think I've rabbited on a bit long, and I think that I shall wrap this up now. I've probably forgotten loads. I don't know. There you go. So I've covered a little bit of history myself, the past, and also the future. So I think I shall stop sharing now, and